Good morning, Namaskar. My name is Bhumika, and I work with the SAREP team, and I welcome you all on behalf of the USAID, MNRE, and the complete SAREP team to today's workshop, or national workshop on exploring virtual power purchase agreements for India. This is the first of its kind workshop on this topic. At present, there are various procurement mechanisms available for commercial and industrial consumers in India to procure green power and green attributes. In the same direction, an additional and innovative RE procurement model like virtual power purchase agreement, like the VPPA, seems very relevant to support the RE penetration and provide benefits like hedging the RE generator against market price volatility, and at the same time paving way for CNI consumers and corporates to meet their sustainability targets and the green mandates. Most importantly, the VPPA can aid the country's sustainable energy journey and help achieve our 2030 targets. Till now, particularly since the launch of the report on VPPA for CNI consumers in India in June 2022 by MNRE, there have been many discussions in silos, and lack of a regulated framework has sort of hindered the stakeholders from participating in such agreements. This workshop today, organized by USAID in partnership with MNRE and the South Asia Regional Energy Partnership Program, aims to bring all the key stakeholders on a common platform to understand the relevance of VPPA in India and brainstorm on measures to introduce and implement in India. The South Asia Regional Energy Partnership is the flagship regional energy program of the United States Agency for International Development, India. This is the 5-year initiative from 2021 to 2026, which works on improving the access to affordable, secure, reliable, and sustainable energy across 6 South Asian countries, that is Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, the Maldives, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Now, without further ado, let me call upon Mr. John Smith-Streen for the welcome address. He's the IPO Director, USAID India. John has been serving as the Director, Indo-Pacific Office of USAID since October 2021. A member of the Senior Foreign Service, he joined USAID in 2000 and has now served in 7 missions, including India, Jordan, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Kenya, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Over to you, John. I would also request Jagdale sir, so please join us on the stage, please.
Dhanyavad, Bhumika. Friends, colleagues, last month, President Biden exclaimed that the friendship between the United States and India is the most consequential of our times. And I would argue that that friendship, that partnership, transcends political, economic, technological, and social dimensions. I would also argue, and if you review the joint statement that was put out by the Honorable Prime Minister and our President, that climate and clean energy rise to the surface in terms of structuring our partnership and in terms of allowing both of our great countries to bring together resources to really drive the agenda. Joint Secretary Jagdale and I had the great pleasure of participating in a very successful meeting just 2 nights ago under what's called the Strategic Clean Energy Partnership, the Renewable Energy Pillar. And that meeting brought together multiple U.S. government agencies and departments with multiple Government of India institutions and agencies to see where we might go in the future to drive renewable energy in India. India has set an ambitious commitment of 500 gigawatts of renewable or of non-fossil fuel energy, and that is ambitious. To get there, we're going to need to be very creative and innovative. Joint Secretary, I think you said we're at 181 gigawatts now. Sorry if I stole one of your talking points this morning. To continue to drive toward that 500 gigawatt target, it's going to require the best and brightest of what India has, what the United States has, what the world can bring together to drive this agenda. It's going to require new technologies, new business models, new approaches, and it's going to require government working together with the private sector, with civil society, with academia. I happen to be an old government bureaucrat. Bhumika kindly elaborated on all the various missions I've served at over my career. I've spent a great deal of time in South Central Asia. I will share with you that government does not have all the answers. We have a few clever ideas. Sometimes we have some additional resources that we can apply to the equation. But by working collaboratively between and among governments, by reaching out and engaging with the private sector, by drawing in academia and civil society and media who can inform.
Sign multiple PPAs to meet the requirement of renewable energy, and since because there are various state regulations existing in various states, and there is different open access charges existing, so this creates an uncertainty for the CNI consumer. For green tariff, that is when a consumer is buying renewable energy from DISCOM at a premium. So there the consumer has to pay a premium for procuring that green energy, and the availability, the supply of the renewable energy by the DISCOM is again subject to the availability of the power with the DISCOMs. The other two procurement mechanisms, renewable energy certificates and green power on the power exchange, which are GTAM and GDAM existing today, they are both prone to market volatility. And the prices and the fluctuation and the quantum of demand and supply that is available on both these platforms, it keeps on varying. Thus, again, CNI consumers, they face certain challenges in meeting their RE procurement, through these two mechanisms. Further, when we talk about RECs, in RECs, what do we generally see that the RECs, they are not traced back to a particular RE project. So the consumer does not know that where the REC is actually coming from. So this makes it difficult from them to claim the additionality to prove that the consumer is supporting or supporting the operation of any RE plant. Considering these challenges, VPPA can be introduced as an additional RE procurement mechanism for CNI customers in India. So we have been talking about that why it should be introduced, but what exactly is a VPPA? It only involves the sharing of the green attributes between the two entities, the RE developer and the CNI consumer. Talking about the operating mechanism of a VPPA, as I mentioned, it's a bilateral agreement between a CNI consumer and the RE developer, and the green attributes are traded between the two entities. These green attributes in the form of a renewable energy certificate can help the CNI consumers in meeting its sustainability target or a RE100 target. In the meantime, the actual physical power that is generated by the RE developer sells that power generated on the power exchange, and that too in the conventional power exchange, which is DAM and TAM. It is like the power cannot be sold on GTAM or GDAM because then it will lead to double counting of the green attributes. in order to meet the actual physical requirement of the power by the CNI consumer keeps on procuring the power requirement from the DISCOM. So here we see that the DISCOM are not losing their bulk and the majority of the heavy paying consumers, which is CNI consumers. Moving on to the commercial mechanism, how the payment settlement occurs between these two entities under a VPPA. The virtual power purchase agreement is based on the concept of contract for difference, CFD, or in India it is being termed as bilateral contract settlement. And under this arrangement, there is a strike price, like the CNI consumer and the RE developer, they sign the agreement at a strike price, which exists for the duration of the contract. And this price is then compared with the market clearing price, which the RE developer is receiving for the selling of its, the brown power that it is selling on the power exchange. The difference between the two prices, the strike price and the market clearing price, it is settled between the CNI consumer and the RE developer. And this is what is called as CFD. The CNI consumer, as I mentioned in my previous slide, that it continues to procure energy from the DISCOM. So it keeps on paying to the DISCOMs for the electricity and the power that it has procured from the DISCOM. Here I have tried to demonstrate the two cases, like how a CFD works. So suppose when the strike price is less than the market clearing price, suppose the strike price is ₹3, and the RE developer is getting the market clearing price of ₹4 from the power exchange, then the difference between the 3 and 4 rupees, the strike price and the market clearing price of ₹1, it will be given back by the RE developer to the CNI consumer. So here CNI consumer is getting a benefit of ₹1. This is another case where the strike price is greater than the market clearing price. So here the RE developer is getting ₹1 less from the power exchange. So the consumer is responsible for giving that ₹1 from the, consumer is responsible, is giving for that ₹1 to the RE developer. So this is how CFD mechanism works, and it was a very broad example that I just wanted to present to clarify what the concept is. Now that we have understood that what a VPPA is, I will now delve on how it would benefit for India. VPPA can help in meeting India's 2030 RE target. As I mentioned earlier, that out of the total consumption of CNI consumers, only 9% is green, and this 9% share needs to increase. Our research and analysis shows that VPPA has a potential to bring more than 20 gigawatts of RE plants in the Indian grid. And if this 20 gigawatt is brought on the Indian grid, then the RE share procured by the CNI consumer, it can increase from 9% to 15%. And this 15% is only for the realistic scenario. If we try to attain optimistic scenario, then I'm sure the share from will increase further from 15%. We have done this analysis based on certain inputs and assumptions, and if anyone wants to discuss how we have reached on these figures, then I'll be happy to discuss with you offline. Due to the time constraint, we are unable to present the entire assumptions and the analysis over here. Secondly, VPPA will help in addressing the challenges in the existing RE procurement mechanisms. In my previous slides, I highlighted few of the challenges about the existing RE procurement mechanisms. So for open access, earlier, the consumers were signing multiple PPAs across various states, but under VPPA, the consumer located across different states can aggregate its demand and sign an aggregated contract and need not comply to various state regulations as well. Under green tariff, where the consumer was paying a premium to procure that green energy, under VPPA, the consumer knows that that strike price is firm, and for the entire contract duration, it will be achieving a particular revenue. For renewable energy certificates and green power exchange, as I mentioned that there is a lot of volatility and fluctuation in the market, and the price keeps on varying. So under VPPA, there will be a firm source of revenue that will be available to the RE developer in the form of the strike price. Further, under RECs, the RECs purchase were not being traced back to any particular RE project. But under VPPA, the consumer knows that its RECs are coming from this particular project, and the consumer can then easily claim that it is helping in the operations and financing of that particular RE project. So this is the additionality that the consumer is getting from VPPA, which was not earlier present under RECs. Thirdly, VPPA is also win-win for all the stakeholders across the value chain, starting from RE developers, CNI consumers, DISCOMs, and the state governments. For RE developers, it will present a firm source of revenue in the form of a strike price. And since it provides a firm source of revenue, it would encourage the RE developers to, who would like to set up merchant RE plants. For CNI consumers, it will help in meeting their RE100 or sustainability targets, and it will help them in claiming that additionality criteria for their reporting and meeting their targets. For DISCOMs, they won't be losing their heavy paying consumers, and for state governments, as it will, as the mechanism will lead to upcoming of more RE plants, the states will be able to meet their RE targets. Moving on to the global scenario of VPPA. We have seen that globally VPPA has been adopted widely in the Europe and in the United States. And these are few of the key VPPAs that have been signed recently in both the Europe and the United States. So we have seen that the contract duration of the VPPA, it is ranging from 5 years to 15 years, majorly 15 years, it is 20 years in few of the cases. And the contracted capacity, it is signed under the VPPA in the form of the megawatt capacity or the number of units which are to be supplied by the RE developer to the consumer. Lastly, now that we have understood that what a VPPA is and how it is beneficial, it is important to deliberate on the way forward also. For easing the adoption of VPPAs in India, it is important that a market sensitization is carried out amongst all the stakeholders in India. And our workshop here is the first step towards it, where we want to create a market where everyone talks about it and knows what the concept is. Secondly, we also need a operational framework to address the Indian market complexities in India, and which will help in easing the adoption of VPPAs amongst the CNI consumers and the RE developers. A regulation and guidelines would be helpful for identifying the scope, regulatory jurisdiction of all the entities under this mechanism. And finally, a standard PPA, which could be a guiding document for RE developers and the consumers. So that was all from my side. Thank you again for being here and being a part of this workshop. Thank you so much. Over to you, Bhumika.
Thank you, Shivali, for your detailed presentation and taking us through all the details. I'm sure there is a lot of perspective and a lot of, so there is a lot of clarity now. I would request Mr. Dinesh Jagdale, Joint Secretary, Ministry and New Renewable Energy, now to present the keynote address. Sir, please. Mr. Jagdale is a graduate in Electronics Engineering and Masters in Business Administration with specialization in marketing, and has over 30 years of experience in electrical renewable energy industry. An innovative thinker, self-motivated, visionary professional, has spent over 22 years of his career working in renewable industry in various capacities. And prior to joining MNRE, he spent his initial years in renewable energy industry, in wind and solar industry, wherein he contributed to growth and of these sectors across multiple states in India. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Good morning. Namaskar. Mr. John Smith Sreen, whom I have that privilege to meet often and take these discussions and partnership between India and US into a different league improve day on day, week on week. And it has been a pleasure always to come and grace such kind of occasions wherein under the India-US partnership and the technical assistance programs, we keep on deliberating on new avenues, new opportunities, and prospects that can lead into a very sustainable growth across India, across the utilities. And today's discussion, which is a very near and dear one in terms of how the commercial and industrial consumer can benefit from the benefits of the renewable energy in all kinds of benefits, environmental benefits, cost benefits, commercial benefits. And that is, I think, it's pleasure to listen to the presentation that Shivali gave today on the virtual power purchase agreements, the prospects, the types, the way it works, and what is the way forward. Ladies and gentlemen, I think, friends, what is important today is to get on to act. And I'm sure during the course of discussions, you have very knowledgeable panelists after this who will deliberate more on what has happened, what is going to happen as well in terms of the forecast and the estimates. But over 30 gigawatt, as I see, from coming from the open access, rooftop, and the CNI, and the various other modes of adopting RE into the electricity mix of a consumer, and mostly the CNI consumer. It's a substantial effort that the government has made, and obviously over the last few years, it has grown. The growth story has really taken into a very different league in terms of the pace at which the RE installations have happened. And it is not an individual effort, it's a collective effort by many different actors, including the international partnership, the international finance organizations, the developers, the manufacturers, the OEM, the think tanks, policymakers, exclusive the state agencies, the state governments, utilities. And what we do is just to give a enabling framework and actually make you get comfortable and mitigate your risk that you perceive into the overall energy domain as we see. Going forward, and when we are talking of this target, one is on the target, one that obviously as a government we have set it, and that gives you a kind of pathway for all of us to work under a target and which we continue to move in one direction. What is more important nowadays actually is the inclination of the consumer, it is the inclination of the commercial entity to become green. And that ability or that initiative taken by every corporate in becoming green under various different mechanisms, some call it RE100, some call it science-based targets, some call it energy compacts, but it is that corporate responsibility, as I see every big corporate, or every corporate, small or big, doesn't matter, is moving towards how he can become green, how can he bring or contribute towards big or small contributions towards climate change, mitigating climate change. But also there is another story to this. What RE brings in is the technological advances and the volumes have made the cost of renewable energy electricity today much more competitive. And therefore, when a corporate is endeavoring into adopting more RE, there is also a commercial benefit out of that. And most of the open access transactions, except for probably green tariffs where he is paying a premium, all the open access transactions have a commercial advantage over the conventional tariff from a distribution utility at which he is buying. And therefore, now our endeavor is to ensure that this particular benefit of lowering the cost of RE is available to the industrial consumer, is available to the commercial consumer, and therefore the green open access rules. Now, the green open access rules, according to me, is a very fundamental reform that has come across and which you are the beneficiaries, wherein the eligibility conditions has become much wider, in the sense more and more consumers are now eligible to take benefit of the green open access rules. There have been certain rules that the states will follow in terms of the uniformity in charges, providing the visibility of the cross subsidy, additional surcharge, and other charges, including the banking, which talks about the monthly banking or a banking cycle, as it mentions. Now, the most important for today's discussion is what prevents VPPAs. According to me, I think probably Vinay and Subbu will deliberate more on this, but I don't feel there is any obstruction towards making this VP more than 15 gigawatt probably, or 15% you said. I think this ability to open access as such, and according to our figures, if I take open access, rooftop and other distributed RE, I'm sure we will cross anywhere between say 70 to 100 gigawatts by 2030. So out of the 500 gigawatt of non-fossil, this particular segment is going to play or going to cater to at least 25% of the installed capacity at that point of time by 2030. So things are going to be brighter. We will, so today's discussions probably I would request that at the end of the day, you mentioned about the awareness, the model document, PPAs. These are, I think, this won't take, this is not a stumbling block. What is important is making people now realize the real benefit, coming up with models and trying to go and show that such kind of structure works. This is the state, this is the regulation, and this is the benefit. I think that the real test is to show the benefit that it accrues from such kind of innovative mechanisms. John mentioned that such kind of mechanisms have been existing across some Western countries since long, and I think that the concept has emerged, and the need also from large data centers or large corporates have emerged from there. One particular generator supplying to multiple or having VPPAs with multiple data centers or multiple consuming entities located at different places, that's the benefit it provides. So that has its edge over other mechanisms, but all together, all are beneficial. I only would like one to check, I don't know whether I am wrong, but RECs, I think you need to check whether, according to me, they can be traced to the generator, but you just check whether that slide which you mentioned, RECs cannot be traced. I think RECs can be traced nowadays. So that is one thing, but on all fronts, it is interesting. I see a lot of known faces, but it's good to come here and always, as it is mentioned, it's a combined MNRE USAID event. We have very new and innovative events lined up hereafter in this year as well. The Honorable Prime Minister, when he went to the US, there were certain very, very important announcements that were made. We are launching a renewable energy technology action platform where India and US will look at new age technologies, including green hydrogen, onshore, offshore wind, trying to better off. And other key technologies, we are collaborating on the hydrogen as such. We are also collaborating on we are co-chairing the hydrogen breakthrough agenda, which was announced in COP last year, I think in Glasgow probably, or a year before. So all that is excited. We are the presidency of G20. In next week, we will be in Goa to finalize the energy transition working group outcomes and deliverables. Therein also such kind of avenues that will promote RE were discussed and will probably be announced in terms of what would be the goal of the G20 as a collective members to what to do and what should we achieve by 2030. So a lot of deliberations have happened, and when the two leaders meet again in 9th of September, I think there will be further announcements in terms of what India and US are going to lead in this effort towards climate change. India has taken aggressive steps, our targets are ambitious, but we are also striving to do what we are actually talking in terms of setting the targets. There is a lot of intent. We had a good quarter this year. We intend to have the tenders, the quantity of tenders, the frequency of tenders will increase very soon. We are entering to offshore wind, we are entering to storage area as such, and green hydrogen, not only the guidelines, but the tenders are out. So there is an urgency that has been reflected nowadays in the overall approach, and the same urgency is being seen from the consumer end as well. So with this, I think I would like to congratulate for this today's event and USAID and the entire members. team that you have organized this event. Good panel discussions, good panelists as such. I look forward to all the deliberations that you have at the end of the day, and we'll meet again very soon. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, sir, for all your insights, and it's always a pleasure to have you. We are grateful to have you, and all your thoughts from your experience over the years, your thoughts on the on the outcomes and the positive, the challenges, as well as the positive move towards VPPA. So we break here for tea now, and we'll resume here in 20 minutes.
have 30 gigawatt of expectation, but I think when the expectation from the ministry is to reach out to maybe the 3x of the capacity we determined, it's really encouraging. And that's what we are looking forward to have from this particular session. This is a Kickstarter for us because we have been working on this concept with the ministry, discussing a lot of activities, and we have partners sitting down here who will be presenting today who also have conceptualized this activity, and they're looking forward to it. So this session particularly will be the technical session. We have 3 presentations down the line, and we have representation from all the 3 different work groups. We have the CNI consumers being represented. We have National Solar Energy Federation of India. Subbu is here, close friend. And then we have also the developers in place. So let me start with the session 2. So let me invite Mr. Vinay Rustagi. Please, if you can join us on the stage. Vinay is the Managing Director at Bridge to India. He has been actively working in the energy sector to advise project developers, investors on a wide range of issues on renewable energy. And Vinay has been previously spending around 18 years on project financing in South Asia. Welcome, Vinay. Then we have Mr. Subramaniam Pulipakka. Please, Subramaniam, if you can join us. So, Mr. Pulipakka is CEO of the National Solar Energy Federation of India, and he is also BITSA Global 30 Under 30 award recipient, and he is also one of the winners of BRICS Young Scientist Award. So, welcome. And then we have Mr. Ramakrishnan Subramanian. He is the lead of business development at Vibrant Energy, and he focuses on helping corporates adopt renewable energy. So he has a very good portfolio he's been working on, and he holds a PGP program from Indian School of Business. So thank you to all of you for joining us today. And to start with, I think this session covers a holistically approach. We have designed it in a way that we look at VPPAs across the value chain. And to start with, I would request Mr. Vinay to talk about how VPPAs can help corporates actually achieve the sustainability targets and how VPPA can merge with the corporate overall planning for renewables. Please.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, SAREP, for inviting me, and good morning to all of you. I think Shivali did a fantastic job giving you an overview of the VPPA, the instrument, the technicalities, how does the CFD structure work. I am hoping to give you a little bit more practical perspective in terms of how VPPAs are different, what is the consumer perspective, and in what cases could VPPAs really be the magical bullet that we are all looking for. So just a very quick introduction about Bridge to India. I know many of you are familiar with us, so I'll run through this. So essentially, we are an independent, renewable energy focused consulting and research company. We work across the sector, across the value chain, across technologies, across different market segments. So here you will see some of our clients from the project development space, some from technology and project EPC and O&M, and many of our clients come from institutional or financial background. Very wide variety of work undertaken on the consulting side. So we advise companies on business strategy. We advise consumers on procuring renewable power. We've advised investors when they're looking at new investment opportunities. Lots of work on policy advisory and advocacy as well. We have, I believe, a very comprehensive and possibly the best research portfolio in the renewable energy sector. We cover all parts. We have very, very detailed databases, reports covering every facet of the renewable energy sector, and then a very unique online tool called India RE Navigator, which has 24/7 updated data on a daily basis, covering all key developments, including tenders, policies, prices, projects, etc., etc. So let me just jump into the VPPAs. Before I do that, I just want to kind of establish two ground realities here, and we saw obviously that covered to some extent in the morning session. The first is the corporates are very, very hungry for renewable power. There is a very strong imperative coming from the climate agenda, from the regulators, from the investors, very ambitious internal targets being adopted by corporates to decarbonize, achieve net zero emissions, RE100, etc., and so on. And then in the Indian context, there is, given that the grid power is so expensive, the aim is to actually cut down on the cost of power. There is, if a consumer is paying 8 rupees or 9 rupees to the grid, the additional objective is to reduce that 8 or 9 rupees and improve the commercial competitiveness of the business. And anything which leads to an increase in cost of power is by and large a no-no. And that is why we have seen many of the new and emerging tools and business routes like what Shivali presented in terms of green tariffs, in terms of RECs, in terms of other things, etc., they have not taken off so far. Technologies like storage have not taken off so far because consumers are very, very cost conscious and they need to reduce their risk, they need to reduce the cost of power. So I think it's very, very important to understand that before we go any further into the discussion. So now this is just a slide explaining how VPPA works. You've seen it all, so I don't want to kind of explain the chapter and verse about this, but as far as the project owner is concerned, in a classic VPPA structure, the project owner is completely insulated. Ultimately, they sell the power on the exchange, they get the any differential over the exchange price with the strike price, they get as a compensation from the consumer. So from their perspective, a VPPA is the same as a PPA, more or less. No difference. From the DISCOM's perspective, let's assume that the consumer is buying power from the DISCOM. So the DISCOM continues to sell power to the consumer, and that is what Shivali said. So the DISCOM is protected. There is no difference as far as the DISCOM or any other source of power for the consumer is concerned. The main difference comes down to the consumer. Consumer is already buying power from the DISCOM or any other source which they are buying in the status quo. The two new changes when a consumer enters into a VPPA are, first, the consumer gets a green attribute, a certain traceable green attribute over a long period of time, and that is the crying need of the consumer. But the second and more important from a commercial perspective is that the consumer is now on the hook for a very long period of time for the difference between the market price and the settlement and the strike price, which means that any time the market price goes below the strike price, consumer needs to pay the differential to the project developer. Now that is, in our view, based on all the work we do, all the people we talk to, etc., quite a bitter pill for the consumer to swallow. It is one thing for the consumer to say that I am guaranteeing a price of 4 rupees, I will buy open access power from a developer at 4 rupees because they know that over the next 25 years they're going to save money. But to keep on buying power from the DISCOM at the same price and then on top of that to guarantee that the market price of this power will remain at 4 rupees over the next 15, 20 or 25 years is quite an ask, is quite a challenge because there's obviously very low visibility about prices on the exchange. In fact, there are all kinds of very strong arguments why the exchange prices might actually collapse given the intermittent profile of renewable power. So VPPA is essentially, in our views, a cost plus and a risk plus option for the consumer. And we can debate this, but that's how we see it. This is, just again, showing the CFD structure graphically. As you can see on the right, every time the market price is above the strike price, the developer pays a differential to the consumer. Vice versa, the consumer has to pay the differential to the project developer. Again, Shivali did cover this in brief, but when we look at what is happening in VPPAs internationally, we see the bulk of the deal flow coming in from the US. There are some deals in Europe, there are some in Australia also, but US is the most mature and advanced market. And while we don't claim to know and understand the US market very well, our reasoning is that the US is not a nationalized market. US grid is not a national grid. There are each state or a group of states, they all have individual grids. It's not a nationalized, united, homogeneous market. And so there are consumers, if they are in a state where there is no renewable source or there is no renewable power available in their local grid, they enter into a VPPA and hence they get the benefit of this renewable power. Many of these countries also don't actually have a concept called open access, which we in India are very, very fortunate to have. We don't realize it, we don't appreciate it, but we very often complain about this, that the open access is not working, we are not getting approvals, etc. But at the end of the day, we have this process, and what we see is the process is actually improving on almost on a steadily basis, particularly since the introduction of green open access rules. So, our takeaway is that VPPAs are talked about a lot. They are talked about as a fantastic new magical tool, very, very successful overseas, but we see very limited and a very reasoned acceptance in the Western world. Now, just in terms of what is the challenge in terms of introduction of VPPAs from a regulatory or policy perspective. So there are three elements in a VPPA. The project developer sells the physical power, brown power on the exchange. There is no problem in doing so. Particularly the brown power exchange is quite deep. There are good volumes and liquidity on the exchange. So that is comes under the CERC regulations, no problem. Second part is the bilateral transfer of green attributes to the consumer, and that is covered under CERC regulations as well. So again, no problem. It is the third component, which is the CFD component, about which there is some ambiguity. And again, we ourselves have met various law firms and various other market experts. Some believe it is still a challenge. There is a lack of regulatory clarity on where does the CFD structure stand, what is the nature of the payment flows between the project developer and the consumer, should there be, what is the taxability of those components, etc. But equally, some people believe that CFDs are permitted under the current framework and there is no problem at all. But nonetheless, it remains an area, a gray area, which still needs to be resolved in our view. So, given what I kind of started with saying that VPPAs are a cost plus and possibly a risk plus option for the consumers, what are the cases in which it makes sense for a consumer to actually still go for open access, for a VPPA? So the first one is a consumer is not able to tap into traditional open access. It could be for a number of reasons. They may be in a state where there is not enough suitable resource, enough radiation or wind speed. For example, let's say Haryana. They may be in a state where suitable land is not available. Again, I can give you the example of Haryana. Maybe a 5 megawatt consumer can tap into open access because there's a small piece of land required. But if it's a large consumer looking to buy 100 megawatts of power requiring, let's say, 400 or 500 acres of good, attractive piece of land at a reasonable price, then that is a major challenge over there. You need a lot of transmission capacity. So that is again a problem in India, as we know. And we see examples even today. For example, a state like Uttar Pradesh, which has got large corporate consumer base, reasonable radiation, reasonable availability of land at a good price, but there is not enough transmission capacity. So again, the larger consumers in Uttar Pradesh are struggling. And then you have cases like Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and many other cases where despite there being a policy written on paper, the approvals are not forthcoming. There is a complete kind of logjam and a denial of approvals. So where do these consumers go? And VPPA is a route for them, an alternative route for them to tap into renewable power. The second use case for VPPA is consumers which are able to tap into open access and other form of direct renewable power procurement, but because of the intermittent profile, they're not able to increase their RE penetration to, let's say, beyond 50, 60 or 80%. Now that depends on what is the consumption profile, and what is the availability profile of the power sources that they've tied into. But basically, once you max out on the time block basis synchronized consumption and generation pattern, then it becomes very, very difficult to increase RE penetration. And you can only do that in some limited scenarios. Either you can bank surplus power into the grid, which is becoming more and more challenging as we go on, or you can store that power, which is not commercially viable as we discussed. And the third route is any other sources like hydrogen, etc., which are again today not viable. So consumers like these, or they can actually go and buy renewable energy certificates, which are a cost plus option. So consumers like these can actually go and tap into the VPPA route. And the third is consumers with distributed operations in rented premises. So I'll give you an example, and we've actually met 2 or 3 of these consumers. So there is a bank with 3,000 branches all over India. And all these branches are in rented premises, lease periods of anything between 3 to 5 years, some of them going up to 9 years. Meters are very often in the names of the landlord. They can't tap into rooftop solar. They can't tap into open access. So what do? And VPPA is a possible route for them to meet their renewable energy procurement in bulk across the country or across different states at least. So these are the various kinds of use cases for VPPAs. But again, all these use cases can again go away if the green open access rules become effective, because under the green open access rules, states are bound to give you a time-bound approval within 15 days to all consumers irrespective of your demand. And I say irrespective of demand because although there's a limit of 100 kilowatts, but there is no limit for captive consumers. And there is a concept called group open access, which means even multiple business units like bank branches, for example, each branch with a load of, let's say, 10 kilowatts, if they can all pool together and have a combined load of more than 100 kilowatts, then they can tap into open access. So all these consumers, if the green open access rules are implemented in earnest and the way they are written, then I think all these use cases actually do go away. Amazon deal has been, there's been a lot of talk about the Amazon deal. It is a marquee deal given the current state of the market. So Amazon has a huge operation in Hyderabad, state of Telangana, which doesn't give any open access approvals. And the company has a very ambitious decarbonization target. So the only option available to them was to enter into a quasi or an alternate VPPA structure, because they didn't deem the CFD mechanism, the true VPPA mechanism viable in today's market. So, but what they have done is, as Amazon, they have said that we will take, instead of entering into a CFD-like structure, we will take physical delivery of the power, and then although we are not able to consume it because of open access, but we will then in turn sell it on the exchange, and we will take the risk of the volatility in the market price, and we will then continue to consume power from the grid as we are doing right now. So that was a pretty bold, I would say, call on behalf of a consumer. It doesn't apply in all the cases. Like I said, most consumers in India want to save money. They want to reduce their risk. But that is the structure we have seen. We know that there are lots of innovation going on, lots of lawyers furiously working away to find other quasi structures like this until the true CFD mechanism becomes viable. So in conclusion, our view is that the direct open access rules, the direct open access under the green open access rules are the most viable and attractive mechanism for a consumer to tap into renewable power, assuming of course that they're implemented in the next few months or 1 or 2 years. And I know that I think about 5 or 6 states have already adopted those rules. 3 or 4 states are in draft stages, but there are many other states, and MNRE is working with them quite actively, proactively to implement and expedite the implementation of these rules. The VPPA is a cost plus option, so it is not for everyone, and The other risk is that the low liquidity on the exchanges can be a risk, but and I say that although there is a reasonable amount of volume, particularly on the brown exchange, but the fact is that on the exchanges we still trade only about 6 or 7% of the total power output or generation in this country. And anytime you have a situation like the monsoon situation where there's a shortage of coal or there's a demand spike and there's not enough supply, etc., prices tend to be very, very volatile. And neither party is kind of willing to take that risk. We have seen that exchange prices shot up to like 20 rupees in the last few months, and the ministry actually had to step in and put an artificial cap on the market prices. So that is the kind of risk that you are exposing to participants to under a VPPA kind of a mechanism. And finally, the regulatory clarity on CFD structure is still awaited. So I think in conclusion, I would say that yes, VPPA is an emerging attractive market route. It is until the CFD structure is allowed, until the green open access rules are implemented. There are some use cases for VPPAs, but by and large, direct open access remains the best possible option for most consumers. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay. I think when you mentioned about viable use case of VPA, that was interesting. So we were actually planning to have some Q&A also, but because we have a time spillover, so let's go through all the presentations and then we'll keep some time for you to ask some questions. So let's move forward. Let me ask Mr. Subramaniam to talk about some challenges of RE developers and how VPP emerges into it. No better than Subbu can tell about the challenges with RE developers face, and he has been spearheading this discussion all over. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Atul. But I'm afraid my remarks have now become obsolete, because after listening to Shivali in the morning, 70% of my slides are of no use, and now after Mr. Rustagi, I don't think my presentation makes any more sense at all. But let me try and bring some perspective on what we are looking at from a policy advocacy point of view, how our members are looking at it, and also maybe bring some interesting discussions and updates that are happening in VPPF front when it comes to our interaction with ministry. I mean, at the risk of sounding repetitive, I would want to take us back to the time when it started. You know, the so-called proverbial catfight between CERC and SEBI on who is responsible for what. MOP's proactive measures involving setting up a committee with all the stakeholders, and finally 2021 October was a milestone moment where we got judgment from Supreme Court. So all ready physical delivery contracts will be governed by CERC, and commodity derivatives will be coming under purview of SEBI. SEBI also has this SCRA, Security Contracts Regulation Act. In fact, in that I've taken the pain to go through all the 48 pages of it and the Gazette. The Section 8 has both electricity as well as carbon attributes there. That is one of the main ambiguity which even Mr. Rustagi also mentioned. Now let us switch back to the problems which we talk about every day of conventional PPAs, most of which Mr. Rustagi and Shivali have covered. But let us look at India's evolution of renewable power or solar in specific. We have always been a tender driven market. Like today, if you say 63.5 was December, now I was told by end of May it is 69 gigawatt of installed capacity. So almost 80 to 85% of the chunk came from ground mounted utility scale market, and the remaining 15% goes to the distributed one. Of course, it is without any doubt, all of us can agree, and the figure speaks for themselves, that 60 to 70% of the distributed installed capacity comes from the C&I market. At NSEFI, we have a tracker. We categorize states based on red, green and blue. Red are the states where you can definitely never think of doing open access. Green is you can definitely do, blue you might have to think twice before doing it. Thanks to Green Open Access, again, 9 states have taken the initiative to notify them. From the ministry side, every month they're being reviewed. We're giving constant feedback. But state level policy impediments still are one of the key challenges for C&I consumers, according to me. In some states, they say, I mean, you can apply how many ever times you want, you're not going to get approval for C&I. That is the kind of issues we are facing. And demand aggregation is, of course, like Mr. Rustagi mentioned, catering to smaller segments was always a challenge. Today, Green Open Access has allowed us for 100 kilowatt and above, but still, given the scale with which the economics of scale makes sense for solar or renewable PPAs, it is still a pertinent challenge for C&I developers to venture into smaller segments, non-rooftop especially. MNCs where they have multiple sites, where you want to power all of them, that is also a key challenge. 100% RE is also one of the issues. I was actually referring to one of the reports, one of the few reports of VPPA in India, where there was another counterpart for 100% RE, a coalition of some companies who want to switch to 100% renewable. We also sort of worked with the RE100 group, giving our suggestions on what can be done to increase uptake of renewables in the corporate, and one of the suggestions was, of course, VPPA. Last but not the least, it is not a rocket science that we cannot expect transition without transmission. Today in the country, we are sort of malnourished when it comes to transmission, if I may say so. Lot of initiatives are on ground. 106,000 square circuit kilometers are yet to come. So all of these are the challenges we look at from a vantage point of the developers when it comes to C&I PPAs. There are other issues also which are more on the operational side, but maybe I would like to take a couple of minutes to talk about them. The time it takes from getting a lead to signing the PPA is always, considerably higher. There is no standard template, if I may say so, for a deal when it comes to C&I PPAs, and maybe that is one of the main things VPPA will solve, if not for anything else. So what do C&I developers want? This, like I said, VPPA is technically, from my perspective, it is PPA plus. So you have a PPA and then your double plus. Indians are known for their jugaad, and as you have seen from Mr. Rustagi's slide, Amazon transformed into a power trader avatar and signed the first virtual PPA, or according to me, world's first physically virtual PPA, if I may say so. I think the potential of VPPA is on the other side of the spectrum. We are now talking about volatility. I think VPPA will take us from volatility to liquidity. That is one of the main things I think is one of the interesting propositions from a market perspective. It is no doubt that today we are transitioning from a government-driven, tender-driven demand to market-driven demand. I was one of the very few people, along with our members, who was happy to see in 2020 the market-based economic dispatch draft from MOP. We were eagerly waiting for a pilot project, albeit the pilot was limited to NTPC's assets. We thought, let us look at how MBED's appetite develops in the market, because in its essence, MBED is a subset of, VPPA is a subset of MBED on the surface level. Unfortunately, we are yet to have a physical look at the virtual MBED aspect so far. Maybe that would have been a better starting point for us to understand the nuances that are introduced by the market. The second option, which I think is a very interesting proposition to me, is when we have a VPPA, so the physical part of the exchange is not happening. I think that would be an allied complement or a supplement to our RTC-based power transactions. Imagine a situation where the the VPPA part of the consumer is of course getting the attributes, but the power that is going into the market is going as RTC power combined with solar, wind and whatever, and that is getting traded in the other market segments. I think that is another opportunity which I personally see. I might be too much utopian when I say this, but that is a reality which is not so far if things get aligned in the way possible. Last but not the least, over the last 2 years, especially post-COVID and pre-rise of market prices of modules, we have observed a unprecedented interest of international consumers, especially in the ASEAN countries, for procuring power from India. Of course, not the physical part of it. I am privy to a lot of initial discussions. Our government also had to facilitate some of the bilateral deals. Some of our members have already started those discussions. I don't want to name them. I think VPPA would be like a icing on the cake for these kind of deals. Countries like Singapore, Malaysia, even now Vietnam and Thailand would be some of the greatest benefactors for it, and ultimately Indian industry is going to get benefited out of it. One last thought I would like to end with is, and this is a very surprising discussion that we are having with ministry since last 2-3 months, is ministry also is very active, or rather very serious about it compared to us in many instances. So we are privy of a possible draft that might come out where government might look at institutionalizing VPPA in the form of tenders and come out with actually guidelines on it. So we went ahead and took the liberty to, okay, I have one last interesting slide for you. So we have analyzed the market outlook for the next 5 years. I mean, I have a bigger, broader version of it which comprises of all the subsegments of solar especially. But when you look at the C&I segment, if it is business as usual, there is no doubt, all of us will agree here, that C&I segment is poised for a unprecedented growth. Like, we are going to triple our annual year-on-year installed capacity. Last year it was 2, this year I'm sure we'll cross 4, but this is a conservative estimate of 4, and we're going to touch 12 by 2027. 12 gigawatt of C&I installed capacity every year. But if we are able to bring some structural reforms, those reforms are not just limited to VPPA, but also some of the disturbingly key issues of green open access, state level reforms, and some hand-holding that needs to be done at a regulatory front, which we also presented to the Forum of Regulators earlier last month. If that can happen, then the C&I market is all set to accelerate. And in that accelerated mode, you're going to almost get 4 times more installations in India compared to what we have today. 2027, our conservative estimates say that India might add around 30 gigawatt or 25 to 30 gigawatt. So imagine you're getting more than 50% from C&I. That is going to be the trend. I mean, I don't want to say that it's not possible to achieve 30 of C&I, as Jagdale sir was mentioning. I am all for being optimistic. These figures can be, can become irrelevant in a minute if things change. But this is the most conservative of outlook that we have taken, observing the market trends. So I personally see, and it's a strong belief from all the developer community, that VPPA is going to be an instrument in accelerating this uptake. And like I said, VPPA's original VPPA and the Indian version of VPPA are so far different. We have not seen any particular resistance from any of the stakeholders for the Indian version of VPPA so far, but it would make more sense to get back to the original definition of VPPA. So privy to the deliberations and discussions between MOP and MNRE, we have we've gone back to the ministry, in fact last month on 21st, and we've written to the Honorable Minister and also the Finance Ministry that the only thing that is stopping us. Technically on paper nothing is stopping, but the ambiguity between the Supreme Court judgment and the SCRA's chapter 8, 62 and 65 having electricity and carbon, that is the only ambiguity that is existing. And if developers want to invest and install, it would obviously be better if that ambiguity is cleared. So we have requested both ministries, in fact, to reconvene the task force that was formed under the chairmanship of MOP and issue this clarification that the non-transferable specific delivery contracts, which are mentioned already in the Supreme Court judgment, they will not be they will not be coming under the purview of.
Out of the 2,000 largest listed companies sell it in the market. And the last one is a co-investment model where we kind of take equity investments from. This ensures the lowest cost of REC so far. So I'll go into each of these models in the upcoming slides. You can kind of reach out to me or you can stop me right now if you have any questions. The first model is an attribute only model. What we do is we sign an IREC PPA or a REC PPA where you only offtake the renewable energy credit, so to say. So Vibrant will set up a hybrid asset and will find energy buyers to offtake brown power specifically, and you will exclusively consume the renewable energy credit for you. The plus side of this model is that it's one of the simplest models that we offer. The negative side is, of course, the plus side is, of course, you get very visible REC procurement. Most of our customers believe that REC prices are only going to rise in the future given that the waiver is going to go away and there's going to be a flooding of brown power in the market. So REC prices, if they get costlier, you can lock in prices for a 15-20 year term and have assured commodity prices for your REC offtake. The flip side is, of course, since the market expects the physical prices for brown power to reduce, you'll be paying a premium over non-additional RECs. So that's the flip side of it. This model offers the highest tariff and is like the costliest option among the three options that we present here. The second model is the power trader model. In this model, the consumer kind of offtakes 100% of the green power. We help the consumer register the energy generated with the tracking mechanism that they use. In this case, I have shown the IREC as a tracking mechanism. By far, it's been the most popular tracking mechanism that we've seen. So what we do is we register the IRECs and we transfer it to our customers. They redeem the IRECs. They can claim the benefits of additionality. And in turn, we also sell the green power to their trader, or we sell it to our own trading entity. We'll help facilitate the physical trade of brown power itself. And you can, then what happens is you have to automatically sell this onward as brown power, either in the DAM, which is the day ahead market, or the term ahead market. You can't sell it onward in the GDAM or the GTAM, which is the green term ahead market. So that's an exposure that you'll be willing to take. What you will be committing to Vibrant is a fixed price. So the simplest or the positive sides of this model are that this is a very simple and the closest that you'll get to a VPPA in India. Like Subbu mentioned, this is physically settled VPPA. I found that funny. And the flip side is you will be exposed to the variability of the DAM prices. So ultimately, if you were to sell power, if you were agreeing to buy power from Vibrant at say 3 or 4 rupees, whatever is the price realized on the day ahead, on the term ahead market, you would have to bear the difference. Now, this is not something that all our customers are kind of comfortable with. They'll be running pharmaceutical plants, they'll be selling cement, making glass. But what do you know about the future 15-year view of the the electricity markets, particularly the brown electricity markets? So this is, although this is our best-selling model, this is not one of the most preferred models for our customers. The third model is something that our customers prefer a lot. What we are seeing today is that there is about $7 trillion of sustainability capital chasing returns. Some of our European customers have raised sustainability bonds and they're under significant pressure to deploy it. What Vibrant does is that we give you an avenue to deploy that capital at an arm's length return, and we set up assets specifically for you, or you can also choose to invest in some of our portfolio assets after a due diligence process. What this ensures is that you get to deploy the capital for an arm's length return. You also sign a renewable energy contract, just like the first model for REC offtake. We register the RECs from these contracts for your consumption, and the power gets delivered to corporates who have already signed up with contracts from us. So these are the three broad models that we have deployed successfully. Across these three models, we've signed PPAs for about 1 gigawatt, and we think that some of the market estimates that my co-panelists have shown are very conservative. Look like we're going to be achieving at least 20% of that on our own. We're not very aggressive in the sense that I don't want to brag here, but just talking out of humility, I think the market is much larger than what my panelists have presented so far. So with that, I'll end my conversation. I don't think I have much time, so sticking to the timelines, I'll just keep this simple. If you have any questions on the three models, we can take it offline. Just to say, this is not the end of the VPPA-like instruments that you're going to see. We are structuring VPPAs of different kinds, specific to the requirements of customers. Those are one-on-one discussions and protected by NDAs. We can look at exploring something similar for you, customized for you as well. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I think we are already, we have a time spillover, but I'll still keep 5 minutes in case you have any questions to any of the panelists. They have been great presentations. So any of you have any questions? Shivali, if you can arrange some mics around. Any questions you have, we can have them answered, or anyway, you can discuss with them offline as well. Anyone? Yeah.
Hi, myself Ashish. I'm from S&P Global. So in one of the earlier slides, we talked about as one of the challenges is, when there are multiple states involved, or the transfer of power is happening interstate. So my question is to Vibrant team, and just to understand, if what kind of issues you are facing there, or is it mostly intrastate that is happening?
So your question is, what are the issues in interstate PPAs, right?
Yeah, interstate VPPAs, and if all these contracts are actually just intrastate.
So most of these contracts that I talk about are being set up at the ISTS level. So the advantage of setting it up at the ISTS level is that you don't pay transmission charges if you commission them prior to 2025. And the second advantage is that you get a higher realization, therefore. There is no consumption in the contracts that we've signed so far for VPPAs. But that said, we've also signed group captive ISTS PPAs, where there's physical consumption. Most recently, we've signed a 100 megawatt PPA with a very large glass manufacturer. There, we are going to be delivering power to more than 6 different states for a consumer having 3 entities. So we are relying on time as our best ally to apply for open access approvals to kind of get them ahead of schedule. In fact, the plan is to go ahead and apply for them just after financial closure of those projects.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Yes.
Hi, my name is Omit. I represent JLL. So at JLL, we have an energy and sustainability services arm where we customize net zero and sustainability solutions for anyone under the sky. So there is a lot of corporates are going for science-based targets, and they're signing up to the 1.5 degree business ambition. Having said that, SBTi doesn't allow you to opt for a carbon offset mechanism. It doesn't permit that. Now, when a corporate is signing up to SBTi, and this is a market-based carbon offset mechanism, as I understand VPPA. So where do you see the balance coming in? And also because of the confusion on the financial settlements by SEBI and all that. So where do you see, in spite of being very conservative in your thought process and saying, you know, you're going to hit an X% or whatever, but is there a balance that you see that's going to come in there?
Who would you like to direct that question, or maybe any one of you would like to answer?
Anyone?
So fundamentally, what we've seen across the industry is that most of these accounting practices are specific to each company. So we know of large blue chip companies who are very comfortable in meeting their net zero commitments through the concept of additionality. So what additionality means is that you don't buy carbon credits from assets that have already been deployed, and that the additional creation of renewable energy means that you've kind of had an incremental impact in your fight against climate change. So carbon credits generated out of assets specifically deployed for you can be counted for your net zero targets. I'm not sure if that means your science-based targets, but that's something that we've specifically seen that some of our large off-takers are compliant with. So it boils down to your corporate accounting mechanisms, so to say.
So basically there's a market for everybody. So anybody who's signing up to sign target not be able for it, but there are other takers.
I didn't get that second question, sorry, can you please
So it's
repeat?
not a question. What I'm trying to say is what you're trying to say is there's a taker, there's a market for VPPAs, and then there is a market for people who may be wanting to
Look, the fundamentally why there is a scalability of VPPAs now in last 2 years and not before that, because the cost LCOE of renewable is fallen below the marginal cost of coal production, as Rohit ji just said, right? So with this analysis from the long-term perspective, with this analysis for 2011, let's say there was a VPPA entered in 2011, what would have been its performance till 2021, and we saw that he would have been in the money by 19 paisa purely because of the price arbitrage. So in the long term, because of the cost of solar is lower than marginal cost of coal, sustainable off-taker is unlikely to lose money in that. And that's how we present it. We don't present it as a speculative activity. You can make a lot of money when there are prices are high, but probability of being out of money is very less, right? So even if the prices are not cleared, like, look, as we always bid on, when we always bid on the zero price, right? So we are always a price taker. Even if it's a 2 rupees, price will be cleared for the 15-minute block basis. But on an average, if you see a long-term trend, you are likely to at least meet what is the strike prices for a sustainable off-taker perspective. And it is 3 rupees. It's a price inelastic market. We cannot have a VPPA with 3.5 rupees or 4 rupees, right? It has to be 3 rupees where developer have to work at.
You trying to say that even with that, consumers will be willing to go, because anyways they are going for a long-term PPAs, so naturally this is also becomes sense. Maybe I will also ask Rohit to present his views. And also, maybe Rohit, you can add that, you know, with VPPA, quantum of power will increase on the exchange. Yeah. So, do you think there are certain changes which are needed in the market structure, or I think everything is all going fine?
Yeah, so very relevant one, in fact. You probably may be aware of one more thing which government is trying to do. So they want to add some part of the future capacity on RE side through market models. So if you see, there is one report which came out, I think, about a month back, where one committee was formed by MOP, and then they did some work for 2 years, consulted a lot of stakeholders, and then came out with this report. And there they are saying that, to begin with, in the first year, they want to add 1,000 megawatt on pilot basis through market models. Now, this is similar to what is being done in Germany and other places, where entire capacity addition is through market. And this is very similar to any other CFD where you are assuring some strike price or strike range or whatever. Again, there are so many different models. So for that to happen, you should have decent sized liquid market available. Why they could do this in UK and Germany particularly? Because there almost 50% of the total power consumed is routed through exchanges. In India, this number is very small, which is, we all know it's about 6-7%. But good thing about India is, the best thing I must say about India is we are growing. Our power consumption is growing. Even after so many years and so many surpluses that we have seen in the recent past, still our per capita consumption is just 1,300. units in a year, which is very small, which is less than 1/3 of the global average. Leave aside Canada, US, other places where it is 15,000 or even more than that. So we are growing, number one. Another point which I touched, there is a lot of capacity available. There's for load shifting. We can shift a lot of demand and bring it to the daytime. Third, the paper which I mentioned, the topic of that paper is development of the power market. So now everybody has realized for RE to integrate in a most efficient way, what we are trying to do here, VPPA, we are trying to, in a way, helping government achieve that goal, right? We are creating a capacity in the pockets. And now we are trying to bring this capacity which is created amongst various pockets to the central level, which is a marketplace. It could be exchange, it could be anything else also. So point that we are trying to do is we are trying to create capacity. We are trying to go away from the rigid PPAs, those which are there. We have seen issues with them. Lot of capacity was auctioned, it was available, but PSAs could not be signed for various reasons. So if you start to do this, the best thing that you will achieve is you would be in a position to control future capacity addition in a most efficient way. Let's imagine a situation. Now suddenly there is 100 gigawatt, 200 gigawatt capacity addition in, let's say, 2, 3, 4 years, imaginary situation, which will bring down the prices in the market, right? And as you rightly explained, RE is going to be a price taker, which means they would be placing bid at zero price. And imagine a situation at zero price also there are no buyer, which means your power will be curtailed. Now, if such situation, when we would be nearing that situation, we can always intervene, we can always control, we can always stop this power capacity addition which is happening. Till now what was happening? Capacity addition was dependent on various states. States were taking call and national level call was not being considered. But if you want to add future capacity addition through market, we are not going to sign PSAs. There will not be any PSA. It is only PPA. There would be central agency like SECI who would be ensuring strike price is delivered to the developers. And then you are controlling it in a most efficient way. So incidentally, we did one study where we have projected 17 years prices going forward, next 17 years. And we have done this projection purely on the basis of marginal price for the time block. So we discovered price for every 15-minute timer. This was done in consultation with SECI as well as Deloitte. They had one engine which they operated and the result were shared with us. Now, marginal cost is the lowest cost which you can imagine in a country, right? Marginal cost means you are dispatching entire generation of the country on the merit order basis. So all the diversity which is there is being taken care and this is the lowest which you can achieve. Even after considering the marginal cost, there are very few months and very few time blocks within those months where the prices are going below 50 paisa. So there would be few instances where it would go because at what rate you are shifting the demand, at what rate you are adding the capacity will decide those blocks. But very few blocks, on an average, generally you will find these prices are going to be around 3 rupees. And we calculated IRR also from the developer perspective, from their point of view, considering solar profile, considering wind profile, and all those cases IRR was more than 20%. So there we have done a lot of correction on the REC price also. So I think there is a lot more opportunities which are available, and if you want to do it at a central level, then in fact there are even more opportunities to do it more efficiently.
I think this is very interesting viewpoint which you have just put in. I think that makes a more better case and solid case. And I feel one of the links always have been discoms, who always have the fear of losing their consumers, and CNI being one of the most highly important customers for them because they cross subsidize. So Naveen, I had this question that what are the levers you feel should be there from the discom perspective, which will encourage adoption of VPPA in India?
So if you see like many corporate entities have decided to go for RE100 targets. So they are they have multiple options to go for RE100 by different means. It could be through green energy open access, it could be through like bilateral contract, and VPPA would be the one which is the less hurt for discom, or I would say there is no change in the status quo for the perspective of discom, because consumer is buying power as they are doing today. whether they are buying it through open access or through DISCOM or through power exchange. So that will remain status quo. So VPPA will not make any impact on the DISCOM in coming times. But I would like to add here, like, though they are committing for 100% RE, they should also try to make the city where they have their premises to make that city and or DISCOM, I would say, more clean and green. So first, they should also exploit the area available with them for putting the RE at the premise itself, so that the power where they are consuming the power, that city should also become green and clean. Like in Delhi, we promote solar in an aggressive manner. And especially if you see the regulations in Delhi, those are quite consumer-friendly regulations. And there are two major concepts in Delhi, group net metering and virtual net metering, if you are aware of. Group net metering means any consumer can put up a plant at any one site and they can get the benefit at multiple premises in our license area. So that should also be adopted by the corporate entities. Not only buying power through outside or under VPPA mode will help the city itself.
Thank you so much. And I think this is my last question to Deboshri. I am in the panel, and then I will open the floor for questions from our respected audience. I mean, legally, what do you suggest is the way forward in this mechanism to be implemented in India, especially in terms of regulatory jurisdiction of VPPA?
So you mentioned the Supreme Court judgment of October 21, right? So the thing is, we look at the outcome, but we sometimes forget how it came from. So like I was saying, in 2010, the power market regs came out, and they specifically allowed for financially settled electricity derivative contracts transacted in the over-the-counter market. So that made it very clear, and they said what over-the-counter market, over-the-market contracts include, et cetera, et cetera. There was an underlying commodity, and it was a derivative contract, and they could be swaps as well. So this sort of a situation made it very clear that, would have made it very clear, had it stayed, that VPPAs are largely permissible. We wouldn't have to run around asking for opinions, taking stakeholder feedback about whether this works, doesn't work. The thing is, because it seemed like futures and forward contracts in electricity were about to be regulated, so a lot of things happened. Ultimately, the Bombay High Court stayed not the operation of the regs, only this provision. And then eventually, a decade later, 2021, in between, MOP had formed its own committee, which the Supreme Court gave its blessings to. And now we have this power sharing arrangement. Unfortunately, it doesn't hit the sweet spot, like I was saying before. So now what we have is the power market regs say, okay, REC contracts can be traded, and as long as there's physical settlement, then over-the-counter contracts can also happen. VPPAs exactly don't fit that category. So if you could just, firstly, without bringing this language back into the legal ecosystem, we could still have a very robust interpretation that VPPAs are permitted. Under embed, as was already being referred to, it's some kind of a contract for differences anyway. Of course, it's not the same thing. And there's a bilateral contract settlement situation happening anyway. So as long as there's political will, regulatory will, it can happen without much of a problem. But the thing is, if you look at the story, the narrative behind it, why did the 2010 regs not pass, not come to muster? And why have the 2021 regs not reproduce the same specification? Is there a problem? I, as a customer, as a buyer, as a sustainability off-taker, would ask that question. So to say that there is still some amount of ambiguity, there is a lack of clarity, precision, wouldn't be too much. I mean, it's completely understandable. So these things can just be sorted out. And SEBI and CERC can come together, like I think was being mentioned before. They can come together and issue their own combined set of regulations, for example, and make it abundantly clear. So there is a clear signal. After that, the sustainability off-takers can take the call.
Great, thank you. I think wonderful input. Nikesh, I just had one more question. I mean, this was more related to the drafting of contract. I mean, as a consumer, any particular thing you would like to be there in the document, you know, I mean, specifically if you have any views on that?
I think probably the primary clause should be on the traceability, because whenever we get into any kind of RE procurement, at least we make sure that, first preference is always for the physical procurement of electricity or energy as such, but mechanism of VPPA, where we speak about procurement of attributes, I think traceability becomes important subject that we need to look into whenever the contract is drafted. We do this with regular PPAs as well. I think with all the manufacturers what we have, we make sure that these clauses are in the agreement. Maybe other than this, I think like everybody said, I mean, the clear regulations, if that could come out from SEBI and CRC together, how those regulations helps regulating the price fluctuations, or how it could be beneficial for both developers and the consumers. I think those aspects could be looked after.
Thank you, Nikesh. I think the panel actually shared a lot of interesting insights. If I see depth of the market is there when we talk about, nature of contractual arrangement is there. Developers have shown that, okay, even in the long-term horizon, the prices will be around that. So there is not much to fear about that, okay, whether VPPA will be successful or not. Traceability was one important element which has come up. And I think these are really good insights which we have received. Any questions if you have for my panel audience? Yes, I have three questions. Great. Can you please pass on the mic? Please introduce yourself and also to whom you would like to have this question.
Thank you very much. It was a very great interaction, the discussion of the VPA. My question to Rohit Bajaj sir, my name is Dr. Yogesh. I am from Radington Solar. I am basically looking the policy and regulatory and government affairs in the Radington Solar. My question to the Rohit sir, sir, you already know the prices of power can vary the significant in the market condition. So how can you decided to predict the cost and budgetary while you're deciding the VPA?
You're right in saying so. We have seen a lot of volatility in the price. We have seen, in fact, last 2-3 years we have seen highest volatility. I was just seeing the prices discovered in our green market. So in green market, prices for FY23 solar profile was little over 6 rupees. If I look back 1 year back, which was FY22, this was 3.6, 3.7 level, and this year again it has come down little below 4. See, variation would always be there. But if you see from the solar generator point of view, today cost of generation, and if you are connected at ISTS level and availing all the benefits that has been given by government and regulator, then your cost is much below the 3 numbers that I have thrown to you, right? So call is to be taken, what is my cost of generation? And then I have to estimate going forward what sort of prices would be there. Then the point that I mentioned earlier, there is great possibility that most of the time blocks in next 15 years, prices won't go below the marginal cost of generation of the thermal power plants, which will give you a lot of confidence that though there would be a volatility, but probably it will never go below 2 rupees or 2.5 rupee. There would be days when it would be 6 rupees also. There would be years where the prices are going to be more than 6 rupees and you can make a lot of gain there. So on an average, you would be better placed. And see, electricity, we are used to signing long-term PPA. Earlier it used to be 25 years. Now people are talking about 15 years, 7 years, whatnot. But there are so many other commodity where though no assurance is there. And till what time PPA would be there? Till the time sellers are willing to give you guarantees. Day will come, day is not far, when it would be driven by market. It is happening globally, it will happen in India also. There is no business where you do not want to take any risk. You have to take some sort of risk. All these assumptions would be probably different for you, different from me. You would say the levelized tariff for next 15 years would be 4, I would say 3.75, and I will be more aggressive in the market, right? So it's a game of risk and reward, and going forward it would not be 100% risk-free business like we see in other commodities.
Thank you, sir.
We had a hand raised from, yeah, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. I have a question. My name is Anil Nambiar and I'm representing Flipkart here. I have a question to the comment made by Mr. Naveen Nagpal. As I understood, what you said is that within city you can use your roof space to generate electricity and distribute within your surrounding facilities if you have any. But what we understand or what we experience is there is to put up a rooftop solar, there is a limitation based on your CMD by the DISCOMs. Plus, most of the states don't, or many of the states are not allowing this wheeling and banking. Are we missing something, or?
So, if I talk about Delhi, the Delhi regulation is so consumer friendly, I would say. There is no limit on the solar capacity compared to the sanction load or contract demand. So, a consumer can install solar capacity beyond the sanction load also, first point. Second is about the wheeling. Wheeling is allowed on monthly basis. So, whatever surplus generation is getting generated, that energy gets carried forward to the next month. This happens for a financial year, and at the end of financial year, if there is any surplus energy which is banked with the DISCOM, so a consumer gets paid for that surplus energy. So banking is allowed. As far as wheeling charges are concerned, wheeling charges are waived off till March 26 as per the recent amendment of net metering regulations. So I would say net metering regulations are quite consumer friendly here, so consumers can look into this aspect. Apart from that, I mentioned about the virtual net metering and group net metering. Those are the unique policy and regulatory frameworks available in Delhi, wherein there are many consumers, I would say commercial consumers, who are putting a large ground-mounted solar parks in the outskirt areas of Delhi, say 4 megawatt, 5 megawatt, and they are getting their energy consumptions offsetted of the other premises from that generation. So that model is also available in Delhi.
Thank you so much. I think time is now ripe to conclude the discussion because we have a couple of other proceedings as well. And I really appreciate the panel who actually shared many interesting insights, wonderful questions. Some questions are still there, I understand, but we can take them offline. I appreciate your patience, sir. Thank you so much once again. Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumit. So very enlightening discussion. I think I remember our briefing discussion with Mr. Bajaj the other day, I think last week, where the point we discussed was, do we really need a specific framework? And I think Mr. Bharat also clearly mentioned about structure is in place, but do we really need to see if guidelines will help it or the ambiguities could be resolved? I think that's something we need to take it forward. So the purpose of this workshop is not just to have this knowledge exchange at this platform, but we also want to conclude by taking feedback from you and also developing a consultation paper which we want to present to the ministry and taking it forward from here, because that's something we take it as a SAREP mandate, and we want to work on this with the Ministry of Renewable Energy and also taking involved with other stakeholders. So currently you will see a QR code on your table, and in case you are unable to have any internet access or you have any challenges, we have some physical copies as well. So I'll request Shivali in case somebody is facing some challenge. We are also broadcasting this workshop, so we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube and our Twitter handles. So all the participants over there also, you will see the link on your comment section. Please use that to submit a short survey. It is very comprehensive. We kept it really short to take your objective type views. We have 5 objective questions and one detailed one to look at how you feel about VPPAs, what is your understanding, and if you see it growing and taking the RE implementation framework forward. So if you can spend some 2-3 minutes on that and submit a survey for us will be helpful. And yes, right, sir. So once you do that, in another 2 minutes, we'll show some interesting insights, what we see how you all feel and our online audience feels about it, and what is your understanding and how you see VPPs could be taken forward. So we give you 2 minutes. And yes, so Shivali, if you can connect it, I think we'll have it real time. So I think QR code is already on the table, so they're scanning. Yes. In case you don't have access to QR code, we can give it to you. Yeah, please spread it across. And in case you are not able to access internet, we have some physical copies which we'll keep as a separate. So you can raise your hand, we can give you a physical copy as well. Okay. So we have 13 responses. I think while we have around 100 participants here and maybe 80 would be present at the moment, let's spend another 2 minutes to have your feedback. Another minute. Okay, so let's, I'll request Shivali if you can scroll the screen for us and maybe I'll walk through. So we have, if I can see correctly, 35, 36 submissions, and we can still keep the link open. You can still submit on the way. But to see the first question on the screen, I think everybody, 100% of the participants think this is an important subject. So that's not a question to be discussed. So if you can scroll it a bit. Yeah. So I understand CNI consumers present down there also participated in this poll. So yes, I think 42 responses. We think this is really important. How do you think VPP can be encouraged in India? There are certain perspectives, but if I see all of the above, I think all perspectives are important, and some of those have already commented. We'll analyze this later, but I think that will be part of our consultation, who all have responded to this as per the category you've chosen. Okay, regulatory piece is, yeah, thank you so much. So, yes, regulatory clarity guidelines modules and would be required. I think that is something we have been deliberating on today. We have difference in opinion at places. We could hear that there is no specific thing required, but still a structure would help adoption and also bring security into the contracts between the consumers and the developers as well. Because when a definition comes in place as part of some guidelines or a policy, it really makes the projects bankable and also acceptable. So Very good. And I think that more are subjective questions which we'll look at later. But thank you for participating into this. And we don't stop here, as I said, because this is one of the kind of workshop we're doing, and we're going to take it forward from here. Okay, so while we come to the closure, but I would like to here invite Ms. Monalizia Hazra. Monali has been guiding us through for organizing this workshop, and Monali is the Regional Energy Manager and the Clean Energy Specialist at USAID India, and she has more than 20 years of experience in clean energy projects across India and also across South Asia. So Monali, I request you to give a word of thanks and closure for this event.
Thanks so much, Atul. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guest speakers and participants. The survey really made my summarization thing easy. So we are at the end of today's workshop, which with very interesting discussion, deliberation, and the panel discussion specifically was very, very interesting. And it's a pleasure for me to offer the vote of thanks for this event, which has been jointly organized, by South Asia Regional Energy Partnership or SAREP program, which is a joint initiative of Government of India, MNRE, and USAID. So we heard speakers and experts from all these different stakeholders with interest on VPPA, whether it was a CNI consumer segment, RE developer, market operator, as well as distribution utility. Thank you, Naveen, for holding the fort for the distribution discoms. The discussion really went into detail about how will VPPA be useful, and what measures are needed in order to really introduce and scale it. Though we did hear from our colleague the different models which has been in Rama, right? Different models which have been used, VPA